Chapter 16. A Nightmare of a Night. Hunter, wake up! I grumbled and rolled over on the bed, hoping the noise would go away. I was given the whole day off to mentally psych myself up for the haunted hayride tonight. The morning was spent at the Carousel Boutique, where Rarity had so generously offered to prepare me a costume for the occasion. After that, Lyra and I decided to enjoy my first legitimate free day. She noticed how shaken I still was over the hayride and assured me time and time again that everything would be fine. "You're worrying too much over this, Hunter," she had said. "Just relax a bit. With Princess Luna and her royal guards watching over the attraction, it would be near impossible for anything to go wrong." Her words of encouragement eased some of my troubles, but anxiety was still slowly eating me away. At roughly 3 o'clock, she suggested I take a nap so that I would be wide awake for the hayride. Unfortunately, most of the time I rested was spent fighting off nightmares. Over the course of my many attempts of sleep, I was visited plenty of times by my doppelganger, the psychotic Twilight, and the zombie-like silhouettes. There were some times when I was just entirely alone. Those are easier to deal with, but I still woke up with a start after them. Of course, it only made sense that the one time I had a peaceful dream, one that involved being reunited with my family, my time was up. "Hunter," the voice persisted. A hoof pressed on my back and gave me a small shove. "You need to get up. The festival is about to start." I grumbled again and opened up a tired eye. Bonbon's blurry figure appeared horizontally before me. My second eye opened and I squinted until her image became sharper. "Ugh. Oh, alright," I sighed. "Give me a sec." I struggled to push myself out of my prone position and sat at the edge of the bed. My head was murky from the rest, so I shook it until my hold on reality was more firm. "Ugh. Where's Lyra?" "She left town a few minutes early to pick up Sweetie Belle from the Carousel Boutique," Bonbon explained. "She asked me to wake you up before the Nightmare Night Festival." "Thanks. Did she say where we should meet up?" "Yes, I believe she did, but I forgot where exactly." The cream-colored mare gave an embarrassed chuckle. "Sorry, but she ran out the door so fast I barely heard what she said. Anyways, you should suit up and get going. I need to be the cause of your tardiness." I nodded. "Alright. Thanks again for waking me up." "Any time," she answered as she disappeared through the door. When I found the willpower, I stood up and searched for the costume Rarity had personally fabricated. I found the pair of black slacks, a white t-shirt and dress shirt, bright bow tie, black overcoat, and black top hat, and laid neatly at the other side of the bed. They appeared to have been ironed, too, courtesy of Bonbon, I could only assume. I was supposed to be a magician, according to Rarity, who found the thought rather comedic given the fact that my body repelled magic. After I shut the door and made sure the blinds were closed, I changed into my costume. I had a little trouble with the tie at first, but in the end I managed to make it work. It suddenly struck me that I only had my grimy, once white tennis shoes to wear. It wasn't a matter of much significance, but the contrasting colors were rather distracting. I made a mental note to ask Rarity if she could ever make me some new ones. I might not wear this suit again, but it would be nice to have a new pair nonetheless. I gave myself one last look in the mirror before leaving the house. "I'm heading to the festival," I called out. "Okay, be careful, Hunter," Bonbon responded from the kitchen. "Have fun." "I'll try," I mumbled as I entered the dark streets of Ponyville. Everywhere, ponies were leaving the sanctity of their homes and into the cold night, warmed solely by their fur and costumes. Some of them were rather ridiculous, not just in the funny manner, but in the pitiful fashion, too. The creativity of costumes ranged from a simple white sheets over the body to represent a ghost to a fully dressed clown, complete with a unicycle and a honking nose. The decor set up for the festival was in full effect now that it was nighttime. Silly-looking spiders looked much more real in the shadows. The pictures of a black pony with green reptilian eyes were more ominous than before, and the cobwebs had a better impression in the moonlight. The jack-o'-lanterns, however, still remained rather goofy in my opinion. Games were strewn here and there, attracting the many creatures of the night with their uniquely entertaining ways. Applejack, dressed as something that resembled Frankenstein, coordinated the many activities. The busy farm pony alternated between posts of apple bobbing, a row of pumpkin catapults, and other games. Some of the foals were drawn to the face-painting booths to get little pictures of rainbows, hearts, crescent moons, or a third eye. A band was playing music in the middle of it all, and many of the adults were dancing before the stage that held the musicians. I found the carriage, along with the princess, Big Macintosh, and the volunteer chaperones near the edge of the festival. Macintosh was wrapped entirely in a layer of gauze, save for the eyes and snout, giving him an appearance of the mummy. Pinkie Pie was in a bright green alligator costume with her face sticking out of the jaws and was hopping around the group and wagging in an excited manner. Rainbow Dash wore a tan pith helmet on top her spectral mane and an olive green vest. Zakor's head and the bulk of the main body were covered in a ragged brown cloak. The only pony not wearing a costume of some sort was Princess Luna. "Hail, Hunter!" the princess shouted when I drew within earshot. "Now that every pony's here, the merriment shall finally commence!" "Hunter, my friend, it has been a long while," Zakor greeted. "It is nice to see you with such a glad smile. Have the sores between you and the ponies been amended? I inquired to know how many you have befriended." "I'll admit there have been complications," I smiled as I formulated how to finish a response. "But fortunately, I've made some reconciliations." "I see you've practiced on your rhyme," Zakor complimented. "You've improved since the last time." Before we had a chance to properly catch up, a heavy pink mass wrapped itself around my neck and pulled me down. Pinkie Pie grabbed me and Zakor into a close hug. "Come on, let's get this show on the road," she said. "The sooner we get this finished, the sooner I can get my hoofs on some candy." Yeah, and the sooner we can go prank some fillies and colts," Rainbow Dash snickered while rubbing her hoofs deviously. "Oh, have I got some ideas." "Then by all means, let us embark on our glorious adventure of mischief and fright," Princess Luna exclaimed. She directed her attention to the mummified Macintosh. "Big Macintosh, art thou ready to proceed?"
Yep.
Then let us entertain the masses." Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash cheered as they set off to harvest some foals. Zakor took a much more composed action and followed the other two mares. While Big Macintosh was busy hooking himself up to the wagon, I jogged up to the princess. Princess Luna?" I asked. "Would you mind if I asked you a question?" "Not at all, Hunter Grey," she replied. She turned her head and faced me with curiosity. "Please, ask away." I struggled to find a way to word what I was about to say correctly as to not potentially insult her or her guards. "Just, for curiosity's sake, how well do you have this path guarded?" "I have a dozen of my most capable night guards stationed along the trail for both the Hayrides Trail and the Foals Trail," she announced proudly. "They are well trained and have been ordered to warn me if they believe they saw anything suspicious, in which case I'll personally call off the hayride if I deem it necessary and evacuate the foals." "What if something happened to the guards?" I asked nervously. "Something that will prevent them from warning you?" "I have the utmost faith in my guards' skills in the art of combat," Luna deadpanned. "Some of them have dealt with things that would make even the most brave ponies shudder." Despite my uneasiness, I nodded and turned to leave. A hoof tapped me on the arm, and I stopped and turned my head slightly in acknowledgement. "This is a time for enjoying yourself, Hunter," the princess reminded. "Do not allow paranoia to ruin the merriment. All will be well." "Thanks," I nodded. "It's just, I don't know. I guess I'm just being a bit irrational over this." Luna smiled. "Good. Now it is time for me to hide. Oh, where did I put those things? Ah, here they are." She put on a pair of plastic vampire teeth in her mouth and experimentally moved her jaw. "Until next time, Hunter Grey, fare thee well." As she headed towards the forest, her body was illuminated by brilliant white light. After I blinked the painful afterimage away, I was surprised to find that the princess was replaced by a much taller pony with a jet-black coat and a blue mist-like mane and white specks inside that floated freely in the air as if underwater. The figure paused at the edge of the tree line and gave me a quick smile before entering. "That," I managed after a few seconds passed, "is one heck of a costume." Later, Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, and Zecora had managed to corral quite an impressive number of ponies willing to partake in the ride. It wasn't just foals either. There were some mares and stallions in the crowd, too. I suspected for the most part they were just parents of some of the more timid foals, though, and probably didn't care too much for the actual ride. The kids, on the other hand, were unable to hold still from excitement. The ponies boarded the wagon groups of 6 or 8 at a time. The chaperones would take rotating turns watching over the groups, starting with Zecora, then Rainbow Dash, and ending with Pinkie Pie before the cycle restarted. I sat in the carriage driver's seat, trying to spook the pony passengers however I could. Nothing horrible happened during the first ride through the forest, nor did anything happen during the following rides. I was pleased to see how all Luna's guards were protecting the trail. My paranoia was slowly dissipating with each ride until I found myself at complete ease. Everything was turning out okay. The foals were enjoying themselves, the adults seemed to be enjoying themselves. I was enjoying myself. We were on the 15th hayride without any unwanted disruptions. Pinkie Pie was chaperoning the group of 7 ponies, of which only one other was an adult. For the latter half of the ride, the pink mare was complaining about a pain in her knees. It seemed like a rather silly thing to complain about in my opinion, but oddly enough, the other adult took it more seriously. Pinkie kept stealing glances behind us as if we were being followed. It was only then that my fears began resurfacing. My humble apologies, Phyllis and Colts, but I'm afraid that this is as far as we can take you, I said, reciting the soundbite that I had memorized for these occasions. Pinkie hopped off of the wagon and herded everybody else out. You are going to have to take the rest of the journey on hoof. Beware of the creatures that lurk in the shadows and stay close together. It would be such a pity for some pony to be lost. The foals were shaking on their legs. They just darted to any shadow that happened to move in the cold night breeze. One of them begged me to take them back. Until the next time we meet, I called as Big Macintosh turned the wagon around. That is, if you survive. I bellowed the darkest laugh I could muster. Big Macintosh reared up on his hind legs and then sprinted forward, carrying me and the wagon away from the terrified ponies. We raced through the Everfree at high speeds. The cold wind felt like a sharp pinpricks across my unguarded face. Only when we broke through the tree line did Big Mac slow down. Well, I think that went rather well, I commented. Yep, Big Mac replied between heavy breaths. Hey, did you see that thing on our way back? The stallion craned his neck. What thing? That thing. I didn't catch a good look at it, I admitted. I was in the bushes, I think. Just a shadow darted by and some rustling leaves. Probably just a squirrel, he offered. My illogical side was already coming up with what else it could have been. A cockatrice, a manticore, a timberwolf, a rabbit animal. You're probably right, I shrugged. We arrived back at the line of ponies, eagerly waiting for their turn on the haunted hayride. Zecora stood patiently at the front, flanked by the next group of passengers. The zebra helped some of the younger foals into the wagon when Big Macintosh brought it to a stop. As everybody loaded up, I couldn't help but feel something was wrong. When I scanned the crowd of costumed ponies, I discovered why. Say, Zecora, where's Rainbow Dash? I asked. I guess this wasn't anywhere in sight, nor was her party of foals. She should have returned by now. Her exact location? I'm not sure. Perhaps she is taking a detour, Zecora answered. I frowned at the response. She knows we've been trying to keep some continuity to this. Why would she try to break the routine now? It took us a while to work out the links in the beginning, but eventually we did have a sort of schedule that everybody kept, including the missing mare. There was supposed to be at least one chaperone of the crowd at all times to maintain order. At most, there would only supposed to be 2 chaperones in the Everfree Forest at a time. After Big Macintosh and I dropped off the group of foals in the forest, we'd be sure to take some time taking the next group to the drop-off zone so that the first group had enough time to make it back out. There were plenty of occasions where one group arrived a few minutes late, but those were mostly at the beginning. Her dash was hardly ever late. She is most likely giving the fool some extra fright, Zecora pointed out. After all, this is her most favorite night. Just give her a minute or two, and I'm sure she'll come right out of the blue. Even so, I looked back at the waiting ponies with discomfort. I almost requested for Big Mac to wait until she arrived, but quickly dismissed the idea. It would be in everybody's best interest if this attraction went as smoothly as possible. Never mind. Let's cut a trail. The wagon lurched as Big Macintosh started pulling again. As we neared the forest, I gave the card one last look, hoping to see a prismatic mane in their midst. Not even a hint of Remerdash was found by me this time, and the trees obstructed my vision. So, have you kids been enjoying yourselves this frightful night? I asked after a few minutes of silence. Totally! A zombified filly replied. This is one of the best nightmare nights so far. I had so much candy I can make it last weeks. I smiled. That's very... I bet I got more than you! A colt, a conquistador, and a conquistador costume challenge. I rolled my eyes and groaned on the inside. This was going to be the fourth time this happened tonight. Nuh-uh, the zombie snapped. I heard a rustling sound behind me. When I turned my head to investigate, I found that they had actually brought her candy bag with her. Yeah-huh, the colt retaliated, bringing his own bag out for her to see. Hey, you two weren't supposed to bring these on the ride, I interjected. The sign specifically said to leave them with a trusted individual. That's a stupid rule, the colt retorted. Why should we do that? As if on cue, the wagon hit a large dip. Everybody, me included, were a few inches out of our seats. When the seats came back up to greet us, the resulting impact caused the two arguing foals to launch their bags into the air and out of the wagon. That's why, I deadpanned. My candy! The disputing duo cried. They started scrambling out of their seats to retrieve their lost seats. Now hold on a minute. You two stay in your seats, I ordered. My tone was probably a bit harsher than I intended, but the fools immediately obeyed. I redirected my attention to Big Macintosh. Hey, could you stop for a few seconds? Some fools dropped some things and I'm going to retrieve them real quick. The wagon came to a stop, and I hopped out. Thanks. The candy bags were dropped a few yards away from the wagon. I felt every pony's eyes boring into my back as I slowly walked to where they lay. The bags contained a small amount of their cargo, but for the most part the candy had been spilled out and strewn across the dirt trail. I knelt down to pick up every individual chocolate bar, sucker, and bonbon and try not to get any dirt or grime on the costume Rarity made for me. Any candy that was exposed, such as random gumballs and licorice, I immediately dispelled into the forest, much to the filly and colt's contempt. Hey, you put some of my candy in yours! No, those are mine! I don't care whose they were, I cut in. Since I have absolutely no idea who had what, I'm evenly distributing whatever candy is edible. You shouldn't have brought your candy in the first place. When you get back into town, you can do more trick-or-treating. The two fools grumbled, but otherwise didn't talk back. It was then that I heard a noise in the gentle breeze that rattled the branches and decaying leaves. It was barely audible. If it wasn't so quiet, I might not have heard it. But when I did, I froze still and strained my ears to listen for more. It was a groan, not one of discontent or anger or boredom like the foals would have created, but one of pain. It was so faint I thought my ears were just playing tricks on me, but then I heard it again. This time, it was accompanied by a ragged cough. The tone was low, definitely masculine, but there was no stallions in sight, save Big Macintosh, who didn't even appear to be in the least bit of pain. I slowly rose up and brought the bags back to the foals. My mind was still with the groan. Curiosity was eating me alive, despite my fearful side screaming at me to ignore it and my logical side telling me to run. Hey, I'll be right back, I told Macintosh. I've gotta check on something. I knew what I was about to do was potentially stupid, and my brain had already accumulated a long list of scenarios and risks, but whatever, or whoever, made that noise was hurt. It couldn't have been most of the creatures that dwelt within the confines of these trees, at least it couldn't have been most of the creatures I encountered in my month of living here. The noise might have been gruff, but it didn't sound wild in any way, shape, or fashion. In fact, I thought I heard a word in the middle of one moan. "Hello?" I called out when I returned to the spot where I first heard it. Another groan responded, and I saw it crept into the trees, using the infrequent moans as my guide. "Is there a pony out here?" I asked. The noises were getting louder. I crept past the tree and whispered, "Hello?" The cough sounded right beside me. My head snapped to the side to behold the noisemaker. Instantly, I flung myself as far away as my legs could propel me in one leap and found my rear when I saw the mangled guard leaned up against the tree. His dark blue breastplate was strewn with dozens of claw marks, each reflecting whatever moonlight managed to break through the thick canopy. The portions of his gray body that were not covered were ripped up. His legs had bite marks and sections of flesh and muscle that were completely torn off. A large gash dominated his left side and stomach. A crimson stained hoof tried vainly to conceal it from the world, but provided little aid to prevent the blood from gushing out. His bat-like wings were utterly shredded beyond use. His dark helmet was beat up and dented in a couple of areas. The plume was disheveled and destroyed. Crimson streams winded down his countenance from a source hidden by the helmet. His yellow, snake-like eyes fluttered open and acknowledged my presence. The things I saw in those eyes: fear, pain, sorrow, self-pity, drowsiness, and a touch of anger. His breathing became more labored as he struggled to inhale through his crushed armor. He moved his lips as to make words, but all that came out were more incomprehensible groans of agony. He closed his tired eyes, took in a deep, ragged breath through his bloodied mouth, opened his eyes again, and directed them to me, and then said one word. "Run!" Ice raced through my veins, chilling every part of my body that wasn't already frozen by the air. My mortified body refused to budge. The guard closed his eyes again and let out one last breath. I waited for his body to rise again, but it never happened. My mind was in overdrive. My body couldn't interpret the torn force that my brain flung at it, screaming to take the dead guard's advice and run away. Only when the branch snapped nearby and as somebody scraped a wooden branch across a rock did my legs decide to function. I darted through the trees as fast as I could. The panting of a cannon resonated from my side, and that accursed growl that I prayed I would never hear again accompanied them. A shadow flashed to my left. I barely caught a glimpse of two sticky yellow-colored glowing eyes from the canine silhouette. "Duck! Now!" The voice screamed inside my head. My resulting drop was more out of shock from the command than the command itself, but luckily its purpose was fulfilled. As my body suddenly crouched, a large Timberwolf sailed over me, skimming just over my head and knocking off my hat, and landed in the bushes to my right. My breathing quickened. My eyes darted around for some sign of familiarity while I sprinted. I couldn't have wandered too far off the trail. Maybe if I just took this next turn. I broke through the trees and fought against my momentum to come to a stop. The wagon was just to the side, its occupants looking at me with curious and worried eyes. I heard the Timberwolf growling again, and another Arctic wave coursed through my body. "We have to get out of here now!" I screamed as I raced up to the wagon. The foes were beginning to panic. As I dashed up to the front, I could hear them murmur amongst themselves in hushed, frightened voices. "I said now, goddammit! Move your flank, Big Mac!" The large stallion was about to protest, but when he turned to glare me in the eye, his own widened at something behind me. I barely had the chance to get into the carriage by the time Big Macintosh sprinted away with it. It was complete bedlam in the back of the carriage. Zecora was desperately trying to calm down the shrieking children, but to no avail. The fools kept screaming at Big Macintosh to run faster. Some of them even broke down into tears. What made matters worse was that we were heading away from Ponyville. Macintosh never had the time to turn around before the chase began, and we were moving too fast for him to make any sharp turns. I stole a glance behind us to see the progress of our pursuer. To my shock, it wasn't too far behind us, and was ever so slightly inching closer and closer. Its wild, luminescent eyes were trained directly at us. Its rabid barks were only rivaled by the screams of the fillies and colts. Sooner or later, the wolf would catch us. It was a morbid thought, but true as could be. Macintosh would tire out eventually from the weight of the carriage and his passengers, and then everybody would be dead within minutes. Unless if he had a diversion.
Don't do it. You'll get yourself killed.
But if I don't, then everyone will get killed, I pointed out.
But there would still be a chance of your survival,
the voice tempted.
You can escape while the wolves are busy with the ponies. There's no reason for you to do any more for them, especially after what they put you through.
I know, I replied. I was already cautiously crawling to the back of the carriage.
Don't tell us you feel as if you owe them,
the voice scoffed. Not at all.
Then why do it? You are no hero. You possess no upper hand in this matchup. You'll be slaughtered without a doubt.
You're very inspirational. Have I ever told you that? I had reached the back of the carriage. My body was tensed in anticipation to jump. There was only one wolf. It should be easy to keep it occupied for a while.
What about your family?
My inner voice asked.
If you jump, you may never see them again. You will never return home and relieve them of the stress you gave them with your absence. Your parents will be devastated when you never return. Your brothers' lives will be scarred beyond repair at the loss of their beloved older brother.
You're right. I wouldn't. I glanced back at the young passengers. They were shaking, crying, holding each other tightly as if this was the finer moments of their lives. Even the zombified filly and the conquistador colt were clamped onto each other. They were children. They still had a life to fill with experience, love, joy, and pleasure. They didn't deserve to die so soon, especially in a similar fashion as the mutilated corpse of the stallion in the forest. I know I'm not obligated to protect them. I might not survive if I jump, and if I do die, then I will never see my family again. But if I go with your plan, the chance of survival may be much greater, but I'll be haunted by this moment for the rest of my life. My parents did not raise me without morals, and I cannot help but think that they wouldn't understand my decision. I planted my foot on the guardrail and tensed my muscles. Besides, I added with a small smile, this will be one heck of a story to tell if I make it. The Timberwolf never saw it coming. I leaped out of the wagon towards the wolf and delivered the most powerful drop kick I could muster on its muzzle. I only grinned at the sickening crunch as the wolf's wooden structure snapped and caved in slightly. Zecora cried out my name as they sped off, but I waved her away and told her to steer Big Macintosh towards Ponyville. The Timberwolf whimpered in agony as golden sap poured from its broken muzzle and shook its head wildly to dispel the pain. By the time it recomposed itself, I was back on my feet and charging at it. I grabbed whatever part of its ragged hide that I could and ripped away the stray branches. The tortured wolf howled and lashed out, opening its sappy maw and lunging at my legs with astonishing speed. I vaulted backward to avoid the attack, but stumbled and fell back when I landed, immediately giving my opponent the upper hand. Again, it snapped at my legs. This time, however, it was successful, seeing how I had no way to properly recover, and sunk its splintered teeth into my right calf. It was my turn to scream in agony, and scream I did. The wolf shook its head, deepening the wound and worsening the pain. I was given bittersweet relief when its jagged teeth broke out of its mouth. Most of these fell out of my bleeding leg, but still few persistent, and sting lodged inside my flesh. With its bite no longer an effective weapon, the Timberwolf had resorted to a new tactic to torture me. It made a gurgling growl and retreated a few paces, but was still within my leg's reach. I knew I didn't have much time before it would attack again, so I made the best decision my pain-filled consciousness could come up with. I rolled to my side and swept my feet underneath the wooden creature's leg. The beast dropped to its side with a dull thud. While it was disoriented, I scrambled up until I was on all fours and then pounced. I wrestled the wolf into a supine position and grabbed onto its razor-tipped paws, rendering them useless to my enemy. It thrashed around underneath me, its rough hide ignoring the thin layer of cloth on my slacks, and scraped against my legs. My brain had difficulties nullifying the pain as I carried out my next task. With my hands firmly grasping the Timberwolf's paws, I stretched its forelegs out as far as I could and bent them back against its shoulders. I met some resistance before I could get them at exactly 180 degrees, and the wolf howled with agony the closer I got. But when I applied my full weight, the legs snapped to the ground. The mutt yelped as my eyes scoured across its forelegs and torso for the area that snapped. There, on its left shoulder, right where the leg connected to the torso. The inner workings of vines and branches were severed, and sap gushed out where I unnaturally bent the ligament. The only thing holding the now useless limb was a handful of twigs. Satisfied with the damage inflicted, I raised a fist and brought it ferociously down upon the creature's already disfigured countenance. My hand accumulated a few gashes and scrapes from the blow, but the force of the impact effectively dazed the creature long enough for me to stand up and stagger back. It was time to end this. I glanced around my immediate area for an effective weapon, something that could easily put this mud out of its misery. My eyes fell upon a large, flat rock jutting out of the ground. It would have to do. The Timberwolf had miraculously managed to get back up, but it was in no shape to attack with its nearly dismembered limb and crushed face. Regardless, it never ran or limped away. It only glared at me with anger-filled eyes as I stumbled over to the rock. It growled again and attempted to move towards me. I was rather impressed with its determination. It was too bad it was going to have to die. I winced in pain with every step I took. The teeth lodged into my right leg, ripped up the flesh and muscle around it, adding more pain to the already existing wound. I numbly wrapped my fingers around the rock and wiggled it out of the earth. It was heavy enough to get the job done. I turned around just in time to see the wolf pounce. Time slowed down. Every detail was taken in. The wolf's limp limb was dangling uselessly in the air. Its demolished face was frozen in a mangled scowl. Its two golden eyes glowed brightly in the night. So much so that it almost distracted me from the claws that sped closer to my own face with every passing millisecond. I didn't have time to pull my face away as the razor-like claws dug into the side of my face and formed 4 distinct crimson trails from my left ear down to my chin. The creature crumpled when it hit the cold earth. My grip on the rock slab tightened as I tried to channel the pain into my fingers. Fire raged across the new wounds. My vision blurred. Rage became the sole motivator of my next reflex.
Die, you freak of nature!
I bellowed. With a sudden burst of energy, I swung the slab into the demon's side, knocking it back a few feet and sending it rolling. I didn't even wait for the creature to come to a halt before jumping on top of it with the slab still in my hand. I raised the slab as high as I could and slammed its thin side down upon its neck like a guillotine. The wolf let out one last yelp, and then it moved no more. I just stood there for a few seconds with my hand still clamped tightly on the murder weapon. A wave of relief washed over me. It was finished. The wolf was no more, and I had prevailed. And you said I couldn't do it, I breathed with a small smile.
Yes, we did, didn't we?
My inner voice mused.
Congratulations, Hunter. You have proven us wrong. It is not often that we are surprised, either.
My adrenaline surge was starting to wear off, and my brain was slowly refocusing on the wounds I had accumulated during the brawl. I brought a hand up to my face where the Timberwolf scraped me and recoiled from the resulting sting. I almost gagged when I saw the crimson painted across my fingers.
Tend to your wounds, Hunter,
the voice said, almost in a soft and caring tone.
Then you must leave. Who knows how many of these wooden abominations still stalk these woods?
I was forced to improvise with my lack of supplies. I took off the black overcoat, untied my bright red bow tie, unbuttoned the white dress shirt, and laid them out before me. Another cold breeze swept through the forest trees. I shivered as the chilling wall of wind weaved through the trees and skimmed over my skin. With numb and crimson-stained fingers, I wadded up the dress shirt and planted it to the side of my face. I had to refrain from ripping it away the moment the cloth touched the raw skin. The pain was far more intense than I had anticipated. I had no way of holding it in place for the time being, so I gently placed the bloodstained shirt back on the ground and got to work on my other wounds. The next order of business was my leg. I sat down and rolled up my right pant leg to assess the damage. Some of the blood was already scabbing over, but not where it counted. The bite marks looked pretty severe, but without the proper medical knowledge, I had no way of knowing just how severe. I took it upon myself to remove the large splinters of wood stubbornly stuck inside. Only a few were willing to relinquish their grasp on my leg. The others put up too much of a fight for me to worry about at the moment.
Fine, I grumbled. Stay in there for all I care. You'll come out eventually.
I ripped off one of the sleeves of the dress shirt that was dangling from my necklace and carefully wrapped from my face and carefully wrapped it around the bloodied areas of my leg. I knew it would do nothing to improve my walking condition, but it did patch up the wound. I wasn't exactly satisfied with my work, but it was the best I could do at the moment. So without further delay, I slowly rose to my feet, wincing in pain as my torn muscles in my legs shouted in protest, put on my overcoat, and staggered towards Ponyville, using the trees as a sort of crutch to steady myself and relieve the weight off my right leg. Unfortunately, I had to cover up my good eye with the dress shirt. My right eye was still usable, but everything was rather blurred through it. So having nothing to tie it to my face, I was forced to prop it up with my left hand. It was going to be a huge handicap if ever I needed to use my hands for something, but assuming nothing else happened on the way back to Ponyville, everything would turn out fine. Well, doesn't this bring back memories? I laughed half-heartedly.
Ah, yes. The good old days.
The voice agreed.
The days of hiding, survival, thievery. So much fun was had. Where did they go?
Heck if I know. It's nice to know, though, that when I get to Ponyville, I won't be fighting for my life.
Ah, now that would be nostalgic. Perhaps while we're here we can pay the old castle a visit.
Thanks, but I'll pass. We laughed together over the thought. Times like these were rare. Usually the voice inside my head didn't respond to small talk, at least not in a positive fashion. It was moments like these that kept me from insanity. When I had no one to talk to. Granted, it actually might have meant that I was insane, but I never cared, as long as I had somebody to talk to. I shook my head. So much has changed. I'm surprised I haven't lost it yet.
Maybe you have. We wouldn't be surprised.
Thanks, bro. It's nice to know I can always count on you, I said sarcastically. An odd scent wafted through the air. It smelled like something was burning? Yes, definitely burning. It was strong, too. The abruptness caught me off guard. A warm glow resonated through some of the trees up ahead. You don't think...
Perhaps the castle wouldn't be such a bad idea.
I hurried my pace, trying to ignore the pain that shot up with each step I took. A new fear began to take command. I hoped for my sanity's sake that it was wrong. But as I drew near to the edge of the forest, the faint screams and howling and smoke only helped confirm it. I burst through the tree line and stumbled to the nearest tree for support. My head was spinning from fatigue. I strained my eye to focus on the horrid image before me. A section of Ponyville was in flames. Screams of ponies rang throughout the whole town. Names were cried out in despair. Silhouettes of canine figures darted here and there, their shadows more pronounced as they danced across fire. Off in the distance, I saw a tall humanoid figure enter the town. Dread washed over me as the conglomeration of images, sounds, and no smell all came together into one thought. Ponyville was under attack.